Hello, this is Lisa Tarich, Community Engagement Coordinator for the Oshawa Museum, and you're listening to an Oshawa Museum podcast. This podcast series aims to actively promote awareness and appreciation of our community's history, highlighting remarkable artifacts, documents, photographs, or events from our past. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Because of the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic, a number of our scheduled events were affected and canceled, including our annual Union Cemetery tours. We researched and developed a new Union Cemetery tour over the winter of 2019, which looked at Oshawa in the 1860s. This podcast is inspired by that research, and we will look at what our community looked like during this decade, and we will discuss George Prentice of Columbus and his involvement against the Fenian Raids. Oshawa became a village in 1850 and would remain a village throughout the 1860s. As well, Union Cemetery at this time was simply the Presbyterian sections. It wouldn't expand and become the cemetery that we know until 1875. For more info on the history of Union Cemetery, please check out one of our other historical video podcasts which delves into the history of Union Cemetery. In the 1869 directory for the County of Ontario, Oshawa is described as such, quote, "A village in the township of East Whitby. It contains several large stores, some of which are as large as any in the county. The place is noted for its manufactories, containing as it does the large foundry and agricultural works of the late Joseph Hall, which are the largest in the province. It also contains Whiting's celebrated hand agricultural implement factory, besides 3 grist mills, 3 tanneries, 2 steam cabinet factories, and several smaller works, all of which give employment to a large number of hands, making Oshawa a place unsurpassed in the Dominion for its size." End quote. The directory notes the community has a Masonic and 2 Orange lodges and a division of the Sons of Temperance. The churches at that time were an English, a Roman Catholic, a Wesleyan, Episcopal, Primitive Methodist, a Christian and a Bible Christian, a Presbyterian, and finally a Baptist. The schools are a Grammar and Common United, besides several private ones. The village also boasts several fine hotels. This hopefully gives you a flavor for what our town looked like at the end of the decade. George Prentice was born in Scotland in 1835. His family arrived in Canada sometime between 1851 and 1857. On January 1st, 1858, George married a woman named Caroline Alexander, and together they had 5 children. He was a blacksmith by trade, but, as indicated on his headstone, he was also the captain of the Columbus Volunteer Rifle Company. In the 1860s and into the 1870s, the Fenian Raids had a number of different repercussions for our community as well as our country. The Fenian Raids took place between 1866 and 1871, and it was a series of attacks by the Fenian Brotherhood on Canada. They were an organization based in the US who wanted Ireland to be separate from Britain. To put pressure on Britain, they attacked Britain's closest possession, being us here in Canada. There were 5 Fenian Raids of note, and all of them ended in failure. One of these attacks was at Ridgeway Station in Niagara, and a local man was one of the casualties. Private William Fairbanks Tempest was killed during the attack, and he is buried in Toronto. One of the results of the Fenian Raids was the establishment of the 34th Ontario Regiment, who celebrated their 150th anniversary in 2016. The Fenian Raids are also often cited as a reason why Canada pushed for Confederation, and one of Canada's only 2 political assassinations took place at the hands of a Fenian sympathizer when Thomas D'Arcy McGee was killed in Ottawa in 1868. The second political assassination happened during the October Crisis in 1970. George Prentice died in 1867 of a disease incurred during the Fenian Raid. He was succeeded as captain by Mr. J.E. Farewell. His funeral was reported in the local newspaper as follows, quote, "On Wednesday last, Captain Prentice, late of the Columbus Rifles, was followed to his grave by companions in arms and a large number of friends. He died on the previous Monday from a disease engendered by fatigues and exposures experienced by him when he was out on service with his company at Port Colborne in the spring of 1866, when the first Fenian Raid was expected. The funeral left his residence in East Whitby, escorted by the men of his own company. Just north of Oshawa, the procession was met by Lieutenant Colonel Fairbanks and other officers of the 34th, the band, and detachments from Captain Brooks's and Michael's Oshawa companies, and the Whitby Infantry Company, which had Captain Darkness for the purpose. The firing company was composed of men of the different companies present. The procession then formed in military order and marched to the solemn music of the band to the Presbyterian burying grounds, where the body was deposited with the usual military honors. Of note, Union Cemetery, of course, was known as the Presbyterian burying grounds because it wouldn't become the Union Cemetery that we know until 1875. This has been an Oshawa Museum podcast. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our other historical video podcasts and subscribe to our channel.